And let me refresh this page and we should be ready to go. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Great to see so many of you coming into the virtual room. It's awesome having you here on this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. It is Wednesday. So hello, Fred. Hello, Victoria. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to be talking about what's the best tool or app or application to do blank. So the reason I do this topic from time to time is I always get questions like, hey, I created, 18 separate Photoshop files that I want to now make into a book. Should I keep doing that in Photoshop or should I use InDesign or Illustrator or whatever? So we get those kinds of, I learned a specific application or I learned a specific way to do it. Is that still the best way or is that the best way to do it in the first place? And so thank you, Brenda, and hello, Rafid and Andrea and Andres and everyone else welcoming or walking into the room virtually. And hello, Ken and Mark and everyone else. So with that said, I'm going to take you through some examples and scenarios. And again, it's one of those things that there's really not necessarily a wrong way. Like, I'm not going to, if you're getting your work done and you're happy with the way the work comes out, great. But I'm just going to hopefully introduce you to maybe some better ways or better tools or things to think about when you're doing certain things. And again, at the end of the day, you can still use whatever application you want to do whatever it is you want to do. But it's just like, if you walked by someone and they were using a hammer to put a screw in the wall, you'd probably stop and want to say, no. You should drill a hole and then screw it in with a screwdriver or use a drill or something like that. Not that they can't get it done with a hammer, but that may not be the best way to do it or the most efficient way to do it, so forth and so on. So that's what this is really all about. So with that said, let's go ahead and let me just fire this up real quick. I'll switch over to my computer and we'll be able to see what I'm doing. All right, so I've got several applications open. I don't think I've got any documents open in any of them. So we're just going to kind of whip through them and go from scratch and talk about best ways to do certain things. So the other thing that compounds this issue a little bit more is that you can do the same thing in multiple applications. And there's no harm in that. So for example, if you said to me, Terry, I need to build a postcard. Should I use Photoshop, Illustrator, or InDesign? My answer is going to be yes, because you can build a postcard in all three applications. And if you're just building a single postcard, use the one that you like best. In other words, the one that you know. If you know Illustrator better, use Illustrator. If you know Photoshop better, use Photoshop. If you know InDesign better, use InDesign. But if you said, Terry, I need to make a 40-page book. Should I do that with artboards and Illustrator or Photoshop? I'm probably going to tell you the minute you said book, my brain immediately went to InDesign. Could you do it in Illustrator and Photoshop with 40 artboards? Yeah. Could you hammer that screw in with a screw or with a hammer? Yeah. It's not necessarily the best way to do it. So each application, although they can do the same thing in many cases, they also have their strengths. So same thing. I love Photoshop. I know Photoshop pretty well. I know Illustrator pretty well, as well. So if you said, hey, I need to draw a logo, and you said, should I draw that logo in Photoshop or Illustrator? The minute you say draw, I'm going to think Illustrator, because Illustrator has more drawing tools. It has more drawing capability. So could you paint a logo and use the vector shapes and things like that in Photoshop? Sure. But is that the best way to do it? All right, so it just depends on... All right, so Andres is asking a really cool question, and I like this question, so I'm going to start with your example. He says, what is the what is the best tool to create a lot of graphics like banners with the same design and perhaps different languages or different text. And believe it or not, I do that almost every day inside Photoshop. Not for banners, but kind of for banners. I do it for my live streaming. And it's easier for me to do that in Photoshop than it is in anything else. Now, could I do it in InDesign? Yeah, InDesign would be pretty easy to do it too. But there's one feature that Photoshop has that makes it a little easier depending on what you're trying to do. So, actually, as I'm saying that, I'm even thinking, well, yeah, I could do that same thing now in Illustrator and Photoshop. So it really depends. So let me show you my example, and then you take it from there. So when we're doing these live streams and you see me like tweet out an image, and that image usually is the same image. It's me with whatever channel I'm going to be on, and it's got whatever the topic is going to be, and of course, the icons for the applications. That's all done in Photoshop, and all I have to do is change one thing. The difference is it's 4 different sizes because I need it for Twitter, I need it for YouTube sometimes, I need it for Facebook, and I need a Facebook cover image. So they're all different sizes. So let me show you an example. Let me open up one. Let's see, what am I going to be streaming on tomorrow? Let me open up. Actually, let me look at my schedule. I'm going to be streaming tomorrow. I'm going to actually create the one that I need for tomorrow. So we're going to do double duty here. Tomorrow's Thursday. It's not Lightroom Thursday. We already had that last week. Tomorrow I'm going to be streaming on Thursday is the Creative Cloud Design Facebook page. And the topic is graphic design on mobile. So now that I know what it's going to be, let's go ahead and work on that file. So I already have that file created. I'm just going to go to Photoshop. I'm going to open it up, find the right one. It's the CC Design. So that's the Facebook page for CC Design. And here's the one I did last week. So as you can see, it's 4 different artboards, 4 different sizes. It's got the same text on each one. It's got the same, almost everything on each one. The only thing that kind of changes is, of course, blue for Facebook, red for YouTube. The thumbnail will change depending on what, or the mnemonic will change depending on which application I'm going to use. But this is all done with artboards and CC libraries. So when you create something like text or an image and you drag it into a CC library, delete it off your artboard, and then drag it back on from the library, it's linked to the item in the library. So everywhere you see what's new in Adobe Capture CC, that was last week's topic, those are all linked to the same item in Creative Cloud Library. So let's say I want to change it, which I do. You'll notice here in the Layers panel that there's a layer called CC Design Topic. So that's the one that I need to change. I'm going to double click on it. When I go into it, you can see, hey, it's hard to see, it's white text. I've got a temporary layer that I turn on just so I can see what it says. And I turn that layer off when I'm done because I don't need it. And tomorrow's topic is going to be, once again, graphic design on mobile. So let's go ahead and change this to graphic design on mobile. And if that won't fit, then I will put some of that on the next line. Graphic design on mobile. So let's say that that's going to be it. I might change that up a little bit tomorrow, but let's say that's going to be it. I'll turn off the temporary layer and then close this. When I close it, it wants me to save it. Yes, I want to save it. And then notice what it did. It updated every single artboard where that was used. So in your example where you're asking about banners that are in different, the banners would be the different artboards. And whatever it says would be the different thing. But since there's going to be different languages, you would have to have them different. So in your example, if you're going to change the type to something different on every single artboard, there is no easy way to do that because you're using different languages. But if you're just using different sizes, different fonts, different everything else, you can do it that way. All right, so for example, tomorrow's date and time, That's another layer. So I just double click on that. Same thing, turn on the temporary layer. That's going to be Thursday. Tomorrow's April 26th. And it's going to be 1 p.m., not 12 p.m. Pacific time. And I go ahead and just simply say it's okay and close it. And boom, it updates across all 4 artboards. Now the last thing, and this is kind of, I got tired of turning on and off layers for the various icons that I was using. So I said, you know what, I can do the same thing. I can create a single row of icons as a separate file, save that into a CC library, and then drag it onto each artboard and then change it when I need to. So that's called CC Design Totems. When I double click on that, clearly that was the one I used last time. It's the Capture CC logo, which I'm still going to use that for tomorrow. Let me go and grab the later, newer library items. Let me switch to a different library here. There we go. And let's say I'm going to use Comp CC, so we'll go ahead and pull that one over. Now I'm pulling these over from another CC library that happens to have all of our icons in it. All right, so I've got the comp one. Let's say that I also want to talk about Photoshop Fix. I'll pull that one over. And that should do it. I could also talk about Illustrator Draw, but in Sketch and a bunch of other things, but that'll do it for now. So we're going to talk about Capture, Comp, and Photoshop Fix. So as soon as I close this and save it, it updates everywhere that I've used that totem and it uses the right size. So how do you create all 4? Meaning all 4 artboards or all 4 icons? So for example, if we were to do this from scratch, we would create a new document. We would tell it whatever size the initial one is going to be. So let's say the initial one's going to be 1920 by 1080 HD size. Then you would check this box for artboards. Once you check the box, then it's going to create one that's that same size artboard. And then of course you can go to your Artboard Tool, which is underneath the Move tool, and you can go ahead and actually, you can go ahead and add a new one. Let's go ahead and add a new artboard. So we're going to create a new artboard that is going to also be, is my 1920 by 1080 in here as a preset? It is, I don't see it, so I'll just do it manually. So I'll create the second artboard, and then we'll go ahead and make that 1920 pixels by, 1920. Actually, I could have just flopped it by 1080 pixels. Yeah, it wants me to just flip it. Here, we'll just flip it. All right, so there we go. And I could also just simply duplicate artboards. Or if I needed that one maybe to be smaller, maybe that one's going to be 720 pixels by 1280 pixels, and we'll just flop it over. There we go. So now I've got 2, 3, 4, how many of our artboards I need. And the way I created that was, let's say I'm going to create the text first. So I grab my type tool, click, make the type a color we can actually see. Let's make it black. And then we'll say, welcome to Adobe Creative Cloud. All right, so we'll stretch that out, make that a little bigger. Now keep in mind, can't make it too big because it wouldn't fit on the other one. So I'll make it whatever size I need to be initially. And what I'm going to now do is move that into a library. So let's move it to our Adobe Live 2018 library. So we'll just go ahead and now drag that in. That becomes an item in the library. Then I can get rid of it off this artboard. So now it's no longer in the artboard, it's just in the library. So now if I pull it over onto the artboard, I can pull it over, put it wherever I want, lock it in, go to the other artboard, pull it over again. Yep, there it is. And if I need to, I can make this one smaller, it's okay. Put that one wherever I need it to be. And now, if I ever need to change it to say something else, it's in there twice, 4 times, 8 times, how many ever artboards you've put it on. Double click on it. That takes you right back into the editing. And I could say, welcome to Adobe Photoshop instead. And once I say that that's okay and close it and save it, it will update all the artboards. Now keep in mind, the P is a descender and I didn't have that high enough or didn't make the file big enough for that to fit. So I'd have to go back into it and perhaps use the crop tool, which gives me the ability to reverse crop. And we'll make that bigger and we'll close it, we'll save it, and now it should fit. So that's how I did it. And that's a great way, a great tool for when you need to make different designs linked to the same asset. So when you update the asset, it updates across the board. Now, where and how would this work? It works in Photoshop. Great, because I can create multiple artboards. It works in InDesign and Illustrator, because InDesign can have multiple pages. Illustrator can have multiple artboards as well. What else? Why else would I do something like this in Photoshop versus, let's say, InDesign or Illustrator? Because Photoshop has another capability, especially when working with graphics, when I'm using something like this to mock up not only the type or the images, but maybe screens or different things I need to put inside of other things. So for example, let me go and see if I can find one real quick. I've got a template. Whenever I am blogging or doing something related to mobile. So if I go to my documents here, open up one of these and open up this one. All right, so here is a mock-up of an iPhone 10. And what I've done is I've placed the home screen on this document. So I've done a couple of things. I've placed the home screen on this document, and I've also put everything in the layers except the blank background, everything in the layers in a layer group or folder. I named that folder. And when let me zoom out again. When I named it .jpeg or .png or whatever you want. I also named it with the size that I need it to be. So it's 325 pixels by 650 pixels, the name of the file, whatever it should be. What that does is Photoshop has something else that InDesign and Illustrator and the other ones don't have. It's called Image Generator. So when I go to my File menu and I choose Generate Image Assets, it's already turned on for this. So it's off by default. You turn it on by document. It will automatically generate images based on your layers or layer groups and what they're called. So for example, if I take a new screenshot, it's going to take me a second to do this. Let me go to I was just there on my blog. Let me go to my blog, for example, and I take a screenshot. So I'm just going to hold the two buttons on the iPhone 10 to take the screenshot. And now I send that screenshot over to my computer. Let me see if there's an easier way to do that. Yep, okay, good. It came up. All right, I heard the noise, meaning that it came over. So it's in my downloads folder. If I open up my downloads folder, should be at the very top. There it is. Okay, so there's a screenshot that I need. So now in Photoshop, if I right-click on that layer that has the screenshot in it, I get the ability to replace contents. And what that lets me do is go find whatever it is I want. So go to Downloads, grab that image, and it just replaces it at the right size, the right everything. Because I've got Image Generator turned on as well, it also, if I go find where this file is located, where the actual PSD is saved, it is in here. Next, and next to the PSD is a folder that it creates called iPhone 10 1 Assets, because the original PSD was called iPhone 10 Tall 1. So if I twirl that down now, there's a new JPEG that's the exact size that I told it to be, that is now representing that logo or that image change. So if I were to go in and do anything else in this group, so let's say just so we can see it happen actually, I'm going to move this. I don't know if I can do both at the same time here. Let me get this out of the way here for a second. I don't know that you will be able to see both at the same time, but I'm going to try. All right, there it is. So now I'm going to go in and just add one thing. So let's say that we want to make that screenshot black and white. So I'm going to go into my adjustments, go to my black and white, which is right there. And that makes it black and white. And see how it went away real quick? Because it had to build a new file. Now that new file is black and white. So any changes I make will automatically generate the new files as needed. That's a Photoshop exclusive, the ability to have image generator. So if I turn off that black and white, it's going to make a quick new asset. Here it comes. There it is. There's the new one now, back in color. So I use image generator anytime that I need to have graphics update based on any changes I make. I use the smart objects and replacing the contents anytime I need something to be what it is, but just change the middle or change the contents. So that is some reasons why Photoshop would be the choice if you were doing that kind of work. Okay, let's pop over to Illustrator. I didn't really mean to spend this much time in Photoshop, but you asked. So let's pop over to Illustrator. Let's create a new file really quick, and let me show you what I mean by it in terms of drawing. So Illustrator, for the most part, looks much like Photoshop. It's got all your tools on the left-hand side. It's got your panels on the right-hand side. You can create multiple documents, artboards. You can place images. For example, these are photographs. So if I want to place a photograph, I can go ahead and drag it over. It becomes a photograph here in Illustrator. Becomes a photograph here in Illustrator. I can resize it, but I don't have any image editing capabilities. Like I can't knock the background out. I can't get rid of the gray. I can't brush on a different color or anything like that. So it's really just placing this graphic as an object. So if I need to do that kind of stuff, that's where Photoshop comes in. But if I want to now draw with this or use this in another way, that's where Illustrator comes in. So for example, you've got the basic shape tools that you've always had in your drawing app. So if I need a rectangle, that's great. I can draw out a rectangle. They've been updated a little bit. So for example, if I pick a color for that rectangle, you'll notice that now I've got the ability with these little handles in the just short of the sizing handles, I've got these live corner handles. So with the live corner handles, I can make my corners more rounded quickly and easily. I can't do that in Photoshop or InDesign. That's just not a feature of those two programs. I can, of course, change that so it has no stroke. That will always be a vector shape. It will never lose its quality, whereas in Photoshop, the vectors, or the images are resolution dependent. The other thing is, I talked about drawing. Well, that was one of the old ways of drawing. Now you have the new shaper tool. So instead of you having to go to a rectangle tool to draw a rectangle, an ellipse tool to draw an oval, a polygon tool to draw a polygon, you've got it all in one tool. So for example, was that shape builder instead of shaper? That's shape builder. I want shaper. Here's a shaper tool. So instead of me having to switch between all those different tools, I can either use my mouse or my stylus and say, you know what, I'd love to have a circle, but I'm not good at drawing a circle by hand by any means. But if I just start to draw one, it creates it for me. Hey, I need a rectangle. That's a bad rectangle, but guess what? Illustrator is going to make it a great rectangle for me. So, hey, I need a triangle. Illustrator is going to make it a great triangle for me. I can't begin to dream of doing anything like that in Photoshop, Illustrator, or any of the other tools because Illustrator's geared for drawing. All right, so let's say I want to take it up a notch. Let's say I want to take that ellipse and I can do the same thing. I can give it a color and I can say that it has no stroke. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Undo, go to this one, go to that. Sorry, I didn't mean to keep clicking on that. You'll notice that instead of the live corners, because it's a circle, it doesn't have corners, I get a new icon. I get this icon that lets me also split this into a pie shape. So I can quickly and easily, when I have live corner capabilities, use them. But when I don't have live corner capabilities, I have the ability to transform the object into a totally different shape. And of course, the other thing that makes Illustrator unique is the Pathfinder and Shape Builder capabilities. Well, at least the Shape Builder. So for example, I can take this shape, I can take this shape, and I can take this shape. We'll make it smaller or narrower, and we'll put all these together, and then I'll select all of these, and then we'll use the other tool that I had by mistake, which was the Shape Builder tool. And now you notice it detects the overlap as I hover over each one of these. So if I need to join these two together, I can just join them together. Now they're one shape. I need to join these two together. I can join those two together. Now they're one shape. I need to join all of that together. Now I can join all of that together and it's one shape. So I can easily and quickly design something that is different than what I originated with. If I can't draw by hand, I can certainly draw with shapes. I'm making a mess of that. That should be a corner handle. There we go. All right, so you get the idea. I made a symbol, a thing. We'll keep it the way it is. All right, so that is Illustrator for as far as, and of course, Illustrator does a million more things, but in terms of strength and where you should be doing things, which tool you should use for what. If the word draw comes to mind, the word build an image comes to mind from scratch, Illustrator sounds more like the tool you'll want. If it talks about photo manipulation and photo editing, Photoshop's going to be that tool. If it talks about automation with images, Photoshop's most likely going to be that tool. If you're talking about photo management, well, we've had Bridge for years, since the CS2 days. And Bridge is great when you need to do something like this. I'm not managing this folder of Evangelist. I'm looking at it. So whenever someone hands me a folder, or I download a folder of images, or download a folder of anything that I want to look at, I don't necessarily want to put these in my photo management tool. I just want to look at them. So I drag that folder right onto the Bridge icon, and boom, it shows me everything in there. And so we got this beautiful picture of Jason. If I want to see Jason full screen, I can hit the space bar. And when I quit Bridge or close this, I've not imported or changed or done anything. I've not messed with my Lightroom photos, which are my photography, my photos. Bridge is a great tool when I just want to look at stuff. Now, it can do more, but that's not what I use it for. What I would use it for is when you want to quickly look at or even change metadata, because it is a great metadata tool as well. But when you want to look at something and open it up and change it or edit it in another program, that's what Bridge was always designed for. Now, Bridge does have Camera Raw built in. So for example, I could take one of these photos, I can hit Command R, and it will open up that photo in Camera Raw. So then I can start applying all the Camera Raw stuff to it. So I've got my white balance. So for example, we can warm Jason up a little bit. We can increase the shadow exposure a bit. We can do all of those things. And then I can say I'm done, which will apply that to the metadata of this photo. Or I could go ahead and open it in Photoshop and keep working on it. Maybe I need to cut Jason out of that background. So I can do all of those things right here in Camera Raw for images that are off, like just off the cuff, quickly as a designer. Someone handed me something, I need to look at it quick. That's what this is for. But if I need to work with my own photos, I am never going to use Bridge for that, because I'm going to want to always have my photos, and I'm going to pop them into either Lightroom CC or Lightroom Classic CC, where I've got images, my hundreds of thousands of images that I'm going to keep collecting for years on end, because these are my photos, these are my memories. Bridge is temporary. It doesn't store anything. It doesn't make a catalog. It doesn't do anything. It's a matter of a file browser with some great graphics capabilities. But when I'm working on my own images and doing the same thing that Camera Raw can do, I'm going to be doing those kinds of things inside of Lightroom. All right, Ray's saying, I work with multiple artboards in Illustrator to keep each piece of art. Each design all together. Surprised that Photoshop offers this. Yeah, Photoshop's offered it for a while now. Illustrator had it first because people kept wanting multiple pages inside of Illustrator. And we kept saying, no, go to InDesign. But they really wanted it for multiple designs. And so that's why artboards came to Illustrator. And of course, they made their way into Photoshop next. So, for example, we talked about this one. We talked about Illustrator. Okay, so let's talk about InDesign really quick. We're already over time by like 11 minutes, but let me quickly get to Illustrator. I'm sorry, InDesign. So what's InDesign for? InDesign is designed for multiple page, longer documents. So when you say, I need a brochure, I need a book, I need a magazine, I need a newsletter, I need multiple pages of the same document, that's where InDesign comes in. And InDesign does a million things that Photoshop and Illustrator don't do, even with multiple artboards, because the multiple artboards is just like a bare minimum feature of what InDesign has always done. And just like InDesign doesn't edit photos, InDesign doesn't draw logos, but InDesign manages the heck out of multiple pages because that's what it's designed to do. So for example, if I were to open up, I think this one has multiple pages in it. Yeah, so here's a multiple page brochure / piece, design piece. And you could say, well, can't you just do that with multiple artboards? Sure. But when it comes time to, number one, publish this or print this, what's your binding going to be? Are you just going to print single pages and then just have single pages? If that's the case, then yeah, use Photoshop, Illustrator, or InDesign. But when you say, hey, Terry, I need to make a 400-page book, and I want them to be facing pages, and I want them to have, 5 columns, and I want there to be some, I want to adjust the margin area because I want to work with the margin. So for my inside margin, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And when you say, hey, I need to have a bleed around it for offset printing, when you start talking like that, InDesign becomes your tool. Because now when I click OK, boom, I've got not 1 page, not 10 pages. I've got 400 pages that work just as quickly as if I was working with 1 page. So when you start talking about long documents, when you start talking about book features, when you start talking about speed, that's where InDesign comes in. When you start saying things like, and also those 400 pages need to be numbered. Are you going to sit there and hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 400 times on your artboards? Of course not. At least I hope you won't. So for example, if I needed to go into my pages panel, and I needed to go into my master pages, and I needed to say, hey, you know what? On each page, I would love to have the publication name on the bottom left. And we're going to call this the Adobe Live Stream News. All right, or news. So now we'll have that on the lower left corners, and on the lower right corners, I would love to have the page number. And that's only on the right pages. So we're going to do, oh, I forgot the keyboard shortcut for that. It's been so long. All right, so here, let me do it the old-fashioned way. Let's go up to type. Let's insert special character. Special character would be symbol. No, not symbols. Markers, current page number, Command, Shift, Option, N. It's been a while since I've done it. All right, so anyway, that would be it. And now that A represents where the page number is going to be. So now if I go to all my right pages, 1, 7, 93, they're all numbered. They're all ready to go. Hey, you know what? Ooh, I forgot. We need the logo in the upper left corner of each page. Are you going to sit there and do that by hand on multiple artboards? Well, yeah, if you only have 4 artboards, not a big deal. But if you have 400 artboards or 400 pages, then it is a big deal. So let's say this is our logo. Drag that in, place it in the upper left corner. And now that is in the upper left corner of all the left pages. No matter how far down I go, page number 130. Page 131, it's all done. So when you're working in a production multiple page document, There is no better choice than InDesign. You say you're going to do that in Illustrator and Photoshop, you can, but I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't push it. I wouldn't even attempt to do that in something like Illustrator or Photoshop. How do I place 300 pages of text into a new InDesign file? If you got your text typed, you go File, Place, go grab your 300-page document and place it. You can even auto-thread it, so it automatically generates those 300 pages for you. You can just create a one-page document, and it'll automatically create the other 299. Can't do that with Photoshop or Illustrator because they were never designed to do that kind of work. InDesign was designed to do that kind of work from day one. Yes, way. So InDesign can place Word files and text files. So if you got your 300-page manuscript already written in Microsoft Word, File Place, and go place your 300 pages. All right, so with that said, I am way over time, but I hope this kind of got your wheels spinning of, am I doing what I need to do in the right tool? So hopefully, yes, you are now, or yes, you will be. Now, we could go on and on and on. We could talk about Adobe XD for doing product mockup and design. We could talk about using Dimension versus Photoshop when it comes time to wrap your decal or your logo around a 3D object. Much easier to do it in Dimension than it would be Photoshop. Can Photoshop do it? Yeah, it'll take time, but you could do it. So it's all about picking the right tool for the job that you're going to do. And don't just, I'm going to challenge you to not just pick up the tool you always use because you know it well, because that is great when that's the right tool. But if I know how to use a hammer really well, but the tool the job requires a drill, then I'm at the disadvantage now. My competitors that really know the tools and they're using the right one are always going to work faster and more efficiently than I can. So don't just stick to using the same tool because that's the tool you've always used. You have Creative Cloud. You have access to all of these tools. So use the right tool for the job, even if it means stepping out of your comfort zone and learning a little bit more about a tool you never used before. All right, so with that said, take care. Thanks for watching. And we know now I'll be on tomorrow on the CC Design Facebook page talking about mobile design or talking about graphic design on mobile. So with that said, take care. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.